Hello, everyone, and welcome to this presentation. Arthurian literature is wrought with fantastical creatures, incredible locales, and breathtaking plot twists, as these tales focused almost exclusively on Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table. However, the most remarkable feature of these beloved stories is the far more intriguing depiction of a character whose reputation precedes her, regardless of the framework through which she is being portrayed, the incomparable Morgan le Fay. This presentation follows the archetypal themes and characterizations of one Miss Morgan le Fay, utilizing Jungian-style psychology in order to better understand Morgan's various representations throughout literature, art, and music. So, let's get started. I did not want to simply follow a chronological timeline, so this presentation is instead organized within 4 archetypal themes through which we will then explore literature, art, and music that are in some way representative of the archetypal characterizations of Morgan in each individual theme. This piece, in particular, has the longest title ever, but that is because it is actually only represented in print within a republished copy of Lamort Art. Thus, the title of the piece is merely based on the section in which it falls within the text. I chose this piece as the introduction to our first archetypal theme, the quest, because this is what we will lovingly refer to as the softer side of Morgan le Fay. So, the quest, which is defined by the need to search for something extremely particular, be it physical or spiritual, in order to achieve a goal of some kind. The quest is an individual process with the outcome holding value usually only for the character doing the seeking. In this case, we are going to look at the depiction of Morgan le Fay in Prose Merlin. Fair warning, the literature-based slides will all have seemingly overwhelming amounts of text. Please don't panic. I promise I will read them out loud to you every single time. So, this text reads as follows. Finally, on the recommendation of the whole family, the king sent the daughter named Morgan to school at a convent. She was so gifted that she learned the 7 arts and quite early acquired remarkable knowledge of an art called astronomy, which she used all the time. She also studied nature and medicine, and it was through that study that she came to be called Morgan le Fay. This serves as a definitive introduction to Morgan as Morgan le Fay, and this depiction, though brief, is very telling of her early characterizations. In the quest for knowledge and truth in Prose Merlin, Morgan le Fay is introduced utilizing 3 distinct archetypal characterizations, which are the helper, the mother and child, and the healer. First, the helper, usually associated in some way with the hero of the tale as a guide or companion, typically with healing capabilities. Morgan is only briefly mentioned in this text because she is just becoming significant, due in large part to an innate proclivity for medicine and magic, and it is also inferred that she has begun assisting several of the more central characters throughout the text as well, utilizing these exact skills. Next, the mother and child, individually unique characterizations, but far stronger when depicted together, especially within the same person, as the mother is both nurturing and protective, and the child is steadily evolving into an independent, self-sustaining character all its own. Morgan is definitively portrayed as both the mother and the child, instinctually helping others whilst also still growing and learning herself. And, of course, the healer, often a very spiritually driven character with healing properties. Thus, Morgan in this text fits this archetype beautifully, as she excels in math, medicine, and magic in order to then be of service to those around her. The following slide is a video, thus cannot be recorded over, so I will briefly introduce it to you now. This early depiction of Morgan, which we just discussed, is often forgotten in lieu of later portrayals. Thus, I wanted to specifically highlight the idea that Morgan is originally introduced as a character as a girl we as a modern audience have often never known, which the following song, written and performed by the aptly titled band Morgan le Fay, captures wonderfully. This song discusses the idea of being awakened to a part of a girl the speaker has never known, which links beautifully back to the early renditions of Morgan throughout the literature. I will trust you to jump to the next slide and listen to at least the first minute and 15 seconds of the song before proceeding to the following slide. This piece by Anna-Marie Ferguson is in print in a modern illustrated version of Lamort Art. I chose it as an artistic representation of our next archetypal theme, the task, because it showcases Morgan as the far more readily recognizable characterization, sorceress, which will play a significant role in our exploration of this theme. So, the task is defined by elements similar to those found in the quest, but the outcomes vary greatly. Where the quest is far more individual in nature, the task is meant to ultimately benefit others, such as the kingdom, the fair maiden, etc. We are going to discuss the task from the perspective of Morgan le Fay, utilizing the text Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. This and the following two slides are all distinct sections from within Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. I'm going to read each text to provide you with a well-rounded view of Morgan's character and purpose within the literature, and then we will discuss the various archetypal characterizations she embodies. The first part of the text reads as follows. She came through the chancel to greet him courteously, another lady leading her by the left hand, who was older than she, an aged one it seemed, and respectfully treated by the assembled knights, but very different in looks were those two ladies, for where the young one was fresh, the other was withered. Every part of that one was rosily aglow, on that other, rough wrinkled cheeks hung in folds. Through the power of Morgan le Fay, who lives under my roof, and her skill in learning, well taught in magic arts, she has acquired many of Merlin's occult powers, for she had love dealings at an earlier time with that accomplished scholar, as all your knights know at home. Morgan the goddess, therefore, is her name. No one, however haughty or proud, she cannot tame. She sent me in this shape to your splendid hall to make trial of your pride, and to judge the truth of the great reputation attached to the Round Table. She sent me to drive you demented with this marvel, to have terrified Guinevere and caused her to die with horror at that figure who spoke like a spectre with his head in his hand before the high table. That is she who is in my castle, the very old lady, who is actually your aunt, Arthur's half-sister, the Duchess of Tintagel's daughter, whom noble Uther afterwards begot Arthur upon, who now is king. We are going to delve in and explore Morgan's task through the steps she takes in order to achieve revenge against Arthur, Guinevere, and Camelot. Within this archetypal theme, Morgan le Fay is depicted utilizing the following character archetypes: the wise old woman, the fool, and the trickster. The wise old woman is rather self-explanatory, as Morgan is literally depicted as an older female who is clearly trusted and admired by all those within the Green Knight's kingdom. It is important to note, though, that, her depiction as wise old woman excluded, Morgan is portrayed throughout this piece using overtly negative connotations, which fuels the following two archetypal characterizations. The fool, often confused or morphed with the clown, is a character most often driven by greed, fame, power, working to achieve selfish desires likely to hinder or harm. Morgan's goal in Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is twofold. She wishes to call into question the actions, or rather inactions, of Arthur and Camelot, whilst also attempting to scare Guinevere to death. And honestly, can you really blame her for wanting to keep Guinevere on her toes? Morgan also falls into the characterization of trickster in this story, an archetype with which I will assume we are all at least somewhat familiar. Morgan not only alters her own appearance, but that of the Green Knight as well, in order to achieve her ultimate goal. She lies and manipulates from afar, plotting and scheming, and she is only revealed once her task is complete, even if the outcome is not exactly what she had in mind originally. Once again, the following slide is a video, thus I will go ahead and introduce it to you now. This video is a snippet from Camelot the Musical, which tells a unique variation of the King Arthur story. In most cases, the character Morgan le Fay is unfortunately removed from the musical in order to save time. However, I was able to find a stage production in which her character is still represented. She is a forest-dwelling fairy with magical powers focused on assisting Mordred in a plot against King Arthur. This characterization of Morgan is quite similar to her portrayal in Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and the depiction of her cunning and adeptness with magic, but inability to resist chocolate, is fascinating. Again, I will trust you to watch at least the first 3.5 minutes of the video prior to moving on with the presentation. I chose this image of Arthur's last moments spent in Avalon as an artistic introduction into our next archetypal theme, initiation, because this moment is a turning point both for King Arthur and for Morgan le Fay. The archetypal theme known as initiation is defined by a character's moving from one stage of life to the next, and though the immediate focus would most often be on the death of King Arthur as an initiation, we are instead going to focus on Morgan's initiation, utilizing Lamort Art as our guide. So I am going to read this giant chunk of text, and then we're going to delve into the nitty-gritty of Morgan's characterization in this work. It reads, "Then Sir Bedivere took the king upon his back, and so went with him to the water's side. And when they were there, even fast by the bank hoved a little barge with many fair ladies in it, and among them all was a queen. And all they had black hoods, and all they wept and shrieked when they saw King Arthur. Now put me into that barge, said the king. And so he did softly, and there received him 3 ladies with great mourning. And so they set him down, and in one of their laps King Arthur laid his head. And then the queen said, Ah, my dear brother, why have ye tarried so long from me? Alas, this wound on your head hath caught overmuch cold. And anon they rode fromward the land, and Sir Bedivere beheld all those ladies go fromward him. Then Sir Bedivere cried and said, Ah, my lord Arthur, what shall become of me now ye go from me, and leave me here alone among mine enemies? Comfort thyself, said the king, and do as well as thou mayest, for in me is no trust for no trust in, for I must into the vale of Avalon to heal me of my grievous wound. And if thou hear never more of me, pray for my soul. But ever the queen and ladies wept and shrieked that it was pity to hear. And as soon as Sir Bedivere had lost sight of the barge, he wept and wailed, and so took the forest and went all that night." Okay, so within Lamort Art and the archetypal theme of initiation, Morgan le Fay is portrayed utilizing the following archetypal characterizations: the foil, the double, and the artist. The foil is defined by a high level of duality, which is displayed both between the characterization of Morgan and that of Arthur, but also through the depiction of Avalon versus that of Camelot. Morgan is a representation of the old ways, pagan, magic, connected to nature, and Arthur is the opposite, Christian, non-magical, residing in the city. This duality permeates much of Arthurian literature, especially this text. When it comes to the archetypal characterization of the double, Morgan fulfills this role with Arthur exquisitely, as it is most often defined by 2 characters who together create wholeness. Morgan le Fay and Arthur are like the yin-yang. They themselves and their subsequent worlds balance one another, creating a unity through their opposition. The archetype of the artist is fascinating when applied to Morgan in this text, because the artist is defined by characteristics such as creativity, mothering, and power. As a representative of the natural world, the artist archetype perfectly fits this depiction of Morgan le Fay, both in her ability to create and adapt, but also in her treatment of Arthur in his final moments. The following slide is yet another musical interlude, so allow me to introduce it briefly before you continue. This music video is, well, an interesting delve into the story of Morgan le Fay and highlights several of the archetypal characteristics we have just discussed. Please view it before moving on. Again, it's definitely something. I chose this piece by Sir Francis Bernard Dixie, even though it is not specifically a depiction of Morgan le Fay, because it highlights the treatment of women under chivalric law, which further questions Morgan's treatment by Arthur and his knights, leading us to our next archetypal theme, the journey. The journey is often a combination of all the other archetypal themes we have discussed thus far: the quest, the task, and initiation. Thus, this is a fantastic final theme on which to focus. I am going to read the following excerpt from one of my all-time favorite novels, The Mists of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley, so that we can delve into Morgan's unique characterization within this text. It reads, "In my time I have been called many things: sister, lover, priestess, wise woman, queen. Now in truth I have come to be wise woman, and a time may come when these things may need to be known, but in sober truth I think it is the Christians who will tell the last tale, wherever the world of fairy drifts further from the world in which the Christ holds sway. And now, when the world has changed, and Arthur, my brother, my lover, king who was and king who shall be, lies dead, the common folk say sleeping, in the holy isle of Avalon, the tale should be told as it was before the priests of the white Christ came to cover it all with their saints and legends. And so Arthur lay at last with his head in my lap, seeing in me neither sister nor lover nor foe, but only wise woman, priestess, lady of the lake, and so rested upon the breast of the great mother from whom he came to birth and to whom at last, as all men, he must go. And perhaps, as I guided the barge which bore him away, not this time to the Isle of Priests, but to the true holy isle in the dark world behind our own, that island of Avalon where now few but I could go, he repented the enmity that had come between us. And so, perhaps, the truth winds somewhere between the road to Glastonbury, Isle of the Priests, and the road to Avalon, lost forever in the mists of the summer sea. But this is my truth. I who am Morgaine tell you these things. Morgaine, who was in later days called Morgan le Fay." Within the Mists of Avalon, Morgan le Fay and the other characters throughout the text are depicted from the beginning of their subsequent stories through the end of King Arthur's life. Our focus, as I'm sure you are all well aware by this point, remains with Morgan. Her journey is defined by three very distinct archetypal characters encompassed in the larger archetypal theme of the journey. These characterizations are the scapegoat, the Earth Mother, and the persona. The scapegoat is an interesting characterization as it focuses most often on the othered character and culminates usually with that character's death, which in turn signifies new life for the surviving characters. In the Mists of Avalon, the reader experiences the rise of Christianity and the downfall of pagan tradition via the circumstances surrounding both Arthur and Morgan le Fay. Morgan, in this text, is representative of the old ways and must ultimately allow herself and her beliefs to be sacrificed to nothing more than a fleeting memory in order for modernity to flourish. The archetype of the Earth Mother is my favorite of Morgan's characterizations as it relies on her inner nature, her inner goddess. The Earth Mother is defined by creation and fertility, but also by death and destruction. Throughout this text, Morgan is presented as harnessing all these attributes as a means of achieving her ultimate goals. I just adore this side of Morgan. She is fierce and loyal, wise and manipulative, elegant and a bit cantankerous, actually. These traits also exacerbate the labeling of Morgan, utilizing the archetypal character of the persona. The persona is tricky because it merely refers to the role each individual character plays at any given time throughout a text. However, it is utterly fascinating to view Morgan through this lens because she wears so many masks throughout this telling of her tale. She is sister, lover, mother, hag, heroine, harlot, insert a shout out to Dr. Martinez here, magician, goddess. These varied personas cannot even begin to narrow the innumerable roles Morgan le Fay has played throughout art, literature, and music. Perhaps that is why she remains so very intriguing. The following slide is our final musical piece, so I will tell you a little about it before you proceed to listen to it. This is a classical piece entitled Morgan le Fay that is represented on an album dedicated solely to Camelot and its supposed rebirth in the modern world. I find these modern adaptations, be it The literature, like the Mists of Avalon, the art, such as the illustration of Morgan by Anna Marie Ferguson, or the music, like this song, to be a beautiful reminder of how resilient stories, themes, and characters can be. So please listen to at least the first 2 minutes of this piece before moving on. Fair warning, there are bagpipes. I wanted to begin our descent into completion by sharing with you all a fascinating point made by Maureen Fries, who wrote an utterly riveting essay regarding the history of Morgan le Fay, which, if you are at all interested in Morgan's history, I absolutely 100% suggest you read. Her thoughts read as follows. Morgan le Fay's career in medieval Arthurian romance moves from a connector of life with healing in the Vita Merlini into a connector of death with illicit sex and wrongful imprisonment in most subsequent works, and produces a more male-friendly variant in the Ladies of the Lake, climaxing for both figures in Malory's Morte d'Arthur, revealing male Arthurian authors as increasingly unable to image powerful women in positive terms. There is a constant struggle between the reality of a story and the reality of a story as presented through the male gaze. Morgan's earliest depictions are strictly from the perspective of the men with whom she comes into contact, which is why it is so important to utilize texts, images, and music as a means of providing a more well-rounded view of Morgan's archetypal characterizations so that we, as reader, as viewer, as audience, can better understand her continued significance. I would like to finish this presentation with a few images of Morgan le Fay in film, ranging from 1921 all the way through 2019. Morgan constantly pops up in television and movies as she is such an iconic character. Most often, shocker, she is portrayed as a villain, but it is important to note that villain or otherwise, she has obviously left her mark on society. And power is derived from being remembered, is it not? Morgan has embodied a vast amount of archetypal characterizations because she represents a tether between humanity and nature. She undertakes whatever role is necessary in literature, art, music, and film in order to remind us both of our humanity, but also of our ability to do and be more than the typecast imposed upon us by others. On that note, I would like to thank you for viewing this presentation. I hope you found it to be both informative and interesting. Please stay safe and healthy. Thank you so much.